Well, imagine this. You've carefully grown your microgreen business. You've marketed it. You've sold them to home deliveries, to restaurants, to grocery stores, and other outlets. But when it comes to selling them on a large scale, you may have become in a hurdle you've never thought of: GAP certification. Welcome to the Microgreen Thumbcast. This is episode 28. I am your host, Mike, with my co-host, Andy, as always. Andy, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing great. Excited for this episode. It's going to be a good one.
Yep, I agree. I'm still coming off that cold a little bit, so my voice is a little jacked up, but we're getting there. It's about 90% back.
Awesome. Well, good thing we have a great guest today to do that. Andy, you want to introduce our guest today?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we are thrilled to introduce our special guest, Carol Allen, who is an expert in GAP certification, a PSA certified produce safety rule trainer, and is an agent associate in food safety in the Department of Plant Science at my alum, University of Maryland, College Park. She holds a master's degree in plant science with a concentration in plant pathology, plant virus, and integrated pest management. And she is literally my personal GAP trainer here in the state of Maryland. Carol, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, thanks for being here, Carol. And you got a great presentation for us to go over, and we'll get into that now.
All right, sounds good.
Jess is bringing that up for you, and there we are.
Look at that. All right. So, hey, I'm in the right place. I'm talking about produce safety and microgreens. And we're going to cover both GAP and produce safety rule. And I'm trying to get my mouse to cooperate here so that there we go. All right. So why produce safety? Now, this sounds like a really dumb question, but it isn't, because I really get, so much, I don't want to say pushback because that's a little negative, but I get a lot of producers, both conventional farmers, hydroponic, aquaponic, I do it all, controlled environment, ag. Why do I have to do this? Well, because what we want to do is we want to reduce the risk of hazards getting into the food stream. And under GAP and produce safety rule, all right, we cover all three types of hazards. So you've got physical hazards. You've got like the light shattering above your head and falling down into your produce. That's going to ruin your day, okay? Brittle plastic, likewise. What about little parts of your tools breaking and falling off into the product? Or edges of containers that should have been retired a long time ago. So we have physical hazards, we've got chemical hazards. And I know in microgreens, we don't use like mega chemicals, but you still have concentrates of cleaning and sanitizing solutions. You may have some pesticides. I don't think so. Hydraulic fluids, if you've got any like mechanical thingamajigs. So you do potentially have possible chemical hazards, but what we really drill down on is microbial hazards, because, oh my gosh, they come from everything. Your beloved workers' hands, their clothing. Maybe they petted Fidos, but they walked out the door and right into your grow room and they've got dog slobber on their hands, okay? We don't have to say anymore. All right. Maybe it's simply your growing area has gotten away from you and you've just got some poor sanitation or poor housekeeping going on in your growing area. And you think, well, that's not where the racks are. That's like next to the racks. My racks are clean. But you believe it or not, guys, that adjacent growing area or storage area, if there's poor sanitation, poor housekeeping in there, you've got potential for cross-contamination. And then when we're talking about controlled environment ag, regardless of whether it's sprouts or microgreens or hydroponic leafy greens, whatever, you've got a whole new set of pests to worry about. Conventional farming, we worry about deer, feral pigs, but in controlled environment ag, we worry about cockroaches. Yeah, I'm sorry. And they're easy enough to bring in. Or those mice, those wonderful mice that want to come in and they look right out of Disney. Yeah, they can really wreck your day. So you're going to need actually a pest control strategy. The other thing to watch out for is improper cleaning and sanitizing practices. There's a lot of stuff out there, and most of what I hear is not the most effective and efficient use of your time or your chemicals involved. And then we have seed contamination. Remember, we're taking that seed from the supplier. we're growing it into its little microgreen. If there's contamination on that seed, you can get transference onto your microgreens. I know better than sprouts, we had that separation between substrate and the actual product that we cut off, but that's proximity. And as a food safety agent, I go, ooh, that's proximity. I don't like that. So knowing where you get your seed from and making sure that it's just, there's no contamination. Manure was not used on the field. I know that's getting into sprout qualifications, but you know, it's okay. You can be better than average. All right. So seed contamination and then water contamination. Pardon me. I do have one of my supervisors helping me out here. So we do a lot of concentrating on water testing or evaluating what your water source is. But then again, I raised that little question of, okay, so it's really good at the faucet. What's your distribution system like? Do you have algae growing in your spray bottles? Something I might worry about. All right. So it's going. So we know that microbes are ubiquitous. They are ever present. And we worry in food safety, we worry. I don't lose that much sleep over it, okay? We worry about E. coli. Now, E. coli is a big genus of bacteria, and they are really all over the environment. What we really get excited about is 0157H7. That is the particular strain of E. coli that causes hemorrhagic uremia. So when you read about like CDC having interstate disease outbreaks, foodborne outbreaks, and they say it's E. coli, usually it's 0157H7 because that's a killer and we don't want that. So E. coli are ever present in animal feces, and there's a whole bunch of species just live in the environment. Okay. And then there's salmonella. We get salmonella from exposure of our growing area, containers, whatever, to animals in general, poultry specifically, and eggs. If you have trouble with insomnia, tune into the CDC website because it has wonderful, it tracks down all of these foodborne illness outbreaks. And I actually find that interesting. It may put you to sleep. That's why I say insomnia, go to the CDC web pages, and you're going to see that salmonella has reared its ugly little head, even with microgreens. And then there's Listeria monocytogenes, or good old listeria. There's lots of different kinds, but we worry about monocytogenes. It likes really cool temperatures. So unlike E. coli and salmonella that really like kind of the warm temperatures, the same temperatures we grow microgreens under, Listeria kind of likes it cooler. And we find Listeria most often just colonizing packing house drains. That's right, colonizing. We can't get rid of the suckers. So drains are a big issue, and maintaining cleaning and sanitizing of drains should be on your list of things to do on a regular basis. And then there's wonderful Campylobacter. Oh, such a nice bacteria. All right. It's found in untreated water, exposure to poultry, exposure to meats. And, you know, I work with a lot of farms, a lot of operations where they are very diverse. And in Maryland, in particular, where I am located, our small to medium farmers, they survive on diversity. So you'll find that you've got someone doing maybe some conventional vegetables. They've got maybe hens in the yard that they're selling eggs. Maybe they sell a little poultry meat on the side. Then they've got the microgreen stand right there. So they are just ripe for cross-contamination. So that's why I mentioned where these bacteria can come from, because if you have a diverse operation, you got to think about your managing cross-contamination is going to be part of what you do on a regular basis. So just to reiterate, microbes thrive in the same conditions that we grow microgreens in, and they're easily moved by water and or dust, which is why housekeeping actually becomes important. Oh, hey, how do you like my cool pictures of those microbes? Yeah, not. All right. So we like to talk about those foods or highest risk foods, foods that are typically eaten raw. And when we look at the guys that we most have problems with nationally and actually internationally, it's going to be leafy greens, tomatoes, melons, peppers, cucumbers. Those are big heavy hitters when it comes to foodborne illness. But then what about microgreens? Well, part of the reason we haven't had major issues is because they grow so fast. All right, that you're got to move the cat. Okay.
Supervise your cow.
I'm sorry. After a while, I can't talk without moving my hands, and I'm holding the cat down at the same time. So, all right. So we know that typically we eat microgreens without that kill step: cooking, pickling, salting, jamming, whatever, that kill step. So when we eat any leafy type of green, microgreens included, raw, we are at an increased risk of bacterial contamination. Now, what's really cool, and I don't know whether that's because microgreens is pretty new, not as widespread, hasn't had the chance to become a problem, there have been no multi-state foodborne illness outbreaks that go back to microgreens. So maybe let's pat ourselves on our back that they grow quick and they have to grow clean, because if you don't grow them clean, then you're going to get all the plant pathogens in there. You're going to have wipeout. All right. So you guys, I probably have an advantage over the rest of the world in the fact that you have to grow very clean in order to get your product out. However, having said that, we do have a couple of issues. Wegmans, back in December of 2022, had a voluntary recall. This is where the government doesn't come in and go, you got to do it. This is where Wegman goes, oh shit, and found salmonella in some of their product. Okay. Their product was voluntarily recalled in 7 states. That's pretty big. All right. And they traced it down to contaminated soil. So this is all what Wegmans did. The CDC did not get involved. The feds did not get involved in this. But we have it on record that we've had contamination from salmonella in microgreens. Up in Canada, they also had 2 other issues, one with Junction Microfarm in November of 2021. And again, our friend salmonella. And then sprouts and microgreens from Sunsprout in September of 2020, also salmonella. Those did not result in foodborne illness. I think they were found like in-house, and there was a voluntary recall. So we know contamination is possible, okay? So let's ensure that it becomes closer to being impossible, okay? So what do we do to prevent foodborne illness outbreaks? So this is where GAPS comes in. That's employing good agricultural practices. And if you're doing a lot of packing, then you're getting into good handling practices. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about GAPS. All right. So GAPS is basically going through step by step all of the parts of your operation and looking to see where your greatest risk of cross-contamination is. Where are your weak points? Okay, so it's all on risk. We want to reduce contamination, both pre-harvest and post-harvest. And just to let you know, Good Agricultural Practices certification is a voluntary certification. This is not federally or state mandated. This is voluntary. However, if you want to play with the big guys like Wegmans or Whole Foods, then it may be required by the wholesale buyer. Here in the state of Maryland, several of our wholesale distributors generally require GAP certification from anybody who sells at Jessup. So that's the location of our wholesale hub. To give you a little bit of background, where did GAPS come from, Good Agricultural Practices? Well, in 1998, U.S. Food and Drug Administration published this weighty tome called A Guide to Minimize Microbial Food Safety Hazards in Fresh Fruits and Vegetables. So actually, that is still used. It's still appropriate. And after 4 years, by 2002, USDA hopped on the bandwagon and said, hey, this is a really good deal. If all of our operators, all of our operations, farms, et cetera, implement everything that's listed in this guide to minimize microbial food safety hazards for fresh fruits and vegetables, then they created good agricultural practices. And then they started inviting farmers, inviting operators to come on board, and they opened up this audit. So you can get a certification in good agricultural practices. Now, you're wondering, well, where does the produce safety rule come in? Well, isn't that a federal law? Yes, it is. And it was based on gaps. So I'm going to segue into how I like to guide people into this whole getting in their head around produce safety. But Food Safety Modernization Act, produce safety rule is based on gaps. And now this is mandated depending on your income of produce sales. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So just to reiterate, we have good agricultural practices, voluntary, nationwide. In Maryland, we have, it's governed by MDA. In the rest of the world, if your state Department of Agriculture doesn't handle it, you can talk to USDA, all right, and directly get GAP certified. And then the produce safety rule comes off of that. So just to reiterate, GAP is a voluntary annual certification. It does require a day of training, and it's something that I get to do. I love it. All right. You have to write a farm food safety plan. You need to implement reduced risk practices. And then you're going to invite, in Maryland, MDA in to audit your safety plan and your implementation, USDA in the rest of the states. And again, voluntary, but maybe required by wholesalers, some restaurants, hospitals, schools. It depends on what your buyer wants, okay? Now, if you meet the basic monetary cutoff of produce sales, now you fall under the produce safety rule. This is now mandatory. It is a federal law. It requires another day of training. Sorry, guys. That's 2 days of training. I'm sorry. All right. Implementation of the practices. And then again, in Maryland, we're so lucky. Our MDA folks will come and inspect. In the rest of the world, FDA comes in and inspect, and it's done on about a 2 to 3 year cycle. Okay. And again, based on annual sales of produce. And I hope I haven't confused you. Please, you can put questions in the chat, and we will answer them as needed or after. Okay. So hopefully we've gotten those two things straight, because let me tell you, operators always confuse GAP with produce safety rule with GAP. One's federal and mandatory, one is optimum and voluntary. Okay, it's just a good thing to do. All right, so I like to tell my operators, conventional farmers, microgreens, doesn't matter. Start with good agricultural practices training, because this is going to teach you all the basic protocols and where your weak points might be. You know, you're doing a risk assessment, right? I'm moving my supervisor. All right, so let me ask you some questions. Do you employ workers? Now, this can be Aunt Mildred. It can be volunteers. It can be your sister. It can be your parents. All right. Do you use water? Yeah, I know you do. Do you see pests? And here in controlled environment ag, we're talking about mice, cockroaches. You know, do you see them? Okay, we got to control them. Do you wash your produce before selling? We can talk for days on that. Do you use tools, bins, baskets, sorting tables, better known as food contact surfaces? All right. So what we're going to do in good agricultural practices is we're going to learn how to assess the risks associated with those practices that I just listed, okay? And then you're going to learn how to minimize the risks and hopefully control cross-contamination. So do you employ workers? So you're going to learn about worker training. And let me tell you, teaching Aunt Mildred how to follow your operations practices. I love family-owned businesses. And oh my gosh, I have a lot of my farmers that are centennial farms, and they're in their third and fourth generation. Oh, the family dynamics. It's so much fun. Okay, worker training. That goes for volunteers too. So if you use water, and I know you guys do, you want to learn about water testing and safe distribution of that water, okay? You're going to learn how to manage and avoid contamination associated with those little critters, like those little Disney mice, all right? Not in your grow area. You're going to learn about the risks associated with washing produce. And I'll say right now that there is no rule and there is no law that states you must wash your produce before it goes to market. Just getting it out there, okay? You're going to learn proper cleaning and sanitizing of food contact surfaces. And I can tell you right now, you're probably not doing it right. I'm sorry. When we look at both good agricultural practices and produce safety rule, when we as officials, all right, look and we work with producers, we have two main issues in all of these different things. One is worker training. It's difficult, people, we understand. But the other thing is very few operations clean and sanitize their food contact surfaces effectively. And if you're going to do it, don't waste your time and money, do it effectively. All right, so I do a lot of training on cleaning and sanitizing food contact surfaces. Okay, so to reiterate, we're going to learn how to assess the risks associated with your practice. This is something that you're going to do internally. You're going to look at, how do I do these things? And after GAP training, you're going to say, whoa, maybe I shouldn't be doing it that way, or maybe I can do it better. All right. You're going to learn how to minimize the risk, control contamination, and then if you get your certification, it can open up new markets, and profitability is all what we're about. We love growing good, fresh, wholesome, really high quality produce, but we want to do it safely too. So here's your ABCs. Take a GAP training course. Now, at the University of Maryland, I teach live audiences, and let me tell you, I love the interplay, the networking in a live group of disparate farmers, conventional, aquaponics, hydroponics, microgreens. Everybody's in that room together. Learn so much from each other. Or we also do virtual. Right now, I'm doing GAP training as requested. So folks will say, hey, I'm getting together a group of 15 farmers. Will you hold a GAP training session? I'm like, show me where, and I'll do it, okay? This is free, all right, to most fruit and vegetable growers, includes you guys, includes mushrooms, aquaponics, and hydroponics, as well as conventional. If you've got multiple crops, no problem. It's just that your farm food safety plan is going to be a little bit longer than other people, all right? Now, if you're not within the sound of my voice, and we can do virtual, Cornell University has an online 3-week course that will run you through USDA basic GAPs. It's currently at a discounted price at $225. I think it's normally at $295, but it's an as you take it over the course of 3 weeks on your own. There's testing, there's projects that you have to turn in, but you could get a USDA GAP certification through that Cornell University course, okay? Now, the second thing I usually recommend is you want to designate a farm food safety officer. And this is often not the owner because you've got a lot to do. So you want this farm food safety officer to be able to act in your stead. They need to have the power of behavioral modification, all right? Not necessarily firing, but they have to be able to have workers toe the line and have some system of, we're just going to say retraining, okay? We're not going to say there is a pink slip in your folder, honey. So, all right, because you got enough to do. And maybe as you grow your operation, having somebody else handle all of the nitty gritty of farm food safety is a good idea. Then you're going to sit down, you're going to write a farm food safety plan. Now, that URL, which I'm sure is going to get distributed to you, is the MDA template. It's written for conventional. When I teach GAP, we go through and we fill out, each person fills out the sections to suit their type of production, their type of farming. So again, we modify it, it's just a guideline, okay? Your farm food safety plan should be looked at annually or whenever there is a significant change in the operations practices. Say, for example, you build a new greenhouse. So you're doubling your potential output. You're going to need to write that in the farm food safety plan. Or you've decided you're going to start growing 3 new crops. Well, that's probably you need to go back and review your farm food safety plan. If you're within the sound of my voice, I will help you write that plan because I know that my farmers are really good at farming. They don't necessarily want to be sitting in front of a computer putting all of this stuff down in a readable format. Okay. Now, you're going to need to write standard operating procedures because you've got an idea as to how you want your operation to run. Okay. You've got your standards, you've got your ways. I've had microgreen growers write literally SOPs like War and Peace on just seeding the flat. So it can be anything in your operation that needs to be specific to your standards. Okay. So you're going to write a bunch of SOPs, and SOP writing is kind of an ongoing thing. So don't think that, oh, I'm not going to be able to get GAP audited unless I have 47,000 SOPs written. No mandatory. But you will need to initiate some required records. We're going to talk about that in a sec. Okay. Then you're going to, everything that you learned in your GAP training course and you wrote in your farm food safety plan, and this is a critical point, if you write it in your farm food safety plan, you darn well better implement it, because that's the first thing that if the auditor comes on your operation and finds that your farm food safety plan is pie in the sky and you're not doing what you wrote, you're going to wish him a good day and he's going to have to come back again. Okay. So that's going to be written. It's got to be what you're practicing, what your procedures are. And then when you're ready, you call MDA or USDA for a GAP audit. It is typically good for 1 year and it has an annual renewal. All right. Okay, an SOP sets the standard step-by-step procedure for employees. It maintains consistency. It allows you to be someplace else because you know that your employees have a list of what they need to do. Need to be reviewed frequently and tested by many different levels of folks. I had one farm manager say, if our 16-year-old summer help can follow the SOP, it's a good SOP. So try it out on your teenagers, okay? And that's going to include all of these points. I'm just going to skip over this because I don't want to take up too much time, all right? And then records. Yes, I know you hate them. Nobody likes to keep records, and there is a pot full of them right there. And again, I'm not going to go over them specifically until maybe a little bit later in the Q&A. Think of them as, I know they're the pain in the butt, as the insurance policy. If it's written down, you have proof that it actually happened. And if the worst case scenario occurs and you have a food safety outbreak or foodborne illness outbreak that is traced back to your operation, if you can show that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's, you did your due diligence, you're in good. Because stuff happens, even when in the most well-regulated of operations. But your records are in your insurance policy. And just a little weirdity, have the name and location of your operation on every document that you write. It happens to be one of those little weird things that is required by the produce safety rule. And when we get into that, you can actually get because you don't have your name and location on your document. Oh, no. All right. So the audit day looms. Don't panic. All right. So for Maryland GAP folks, we actually had the auditor checklist right here. You've got your cheat sheet. So once you've written your farm food safety plan, you can go through this cheat sheet. This is exactly what the auditor is going to ask you, point by point. Easy. The other thing I strongly recommend is have me, if you're in Maryland, do a pre-GAP walkthrough. I go on your operation. We look at the cheat sheet. We look at your farm food safety plan. We look at your operation, your implementation. I point out where you're weak, you need to strengthen, and then you are so ready. Now, what is so cool about starting with GAP is because it sets you up for the produce safety rule inspection. Because remember, the produce safety rule is nothing but the federal laws applied to good agricultural practices. So that's why I really like my farmers to go through GAP first, because then produce safety rule is just so easy. Now, if you are facing a produce safety rule inspection, at this time, a farm food safety plan is not required for produce safety rule. It may in the next few years. But do request what is called an on-farm readiness review. We do it in Maryland. All states will do an OFRR. And that's basically in Maryland, we have someone from the University of Maryland, an educator like me. You're usually your local extension agent and someone from FDA out of state, MDA in state. And we actually go through the questions just like we do a mock inspection, which means that we can find out where you're weak, where you need to shore up before you get that inspection. So ask for an OFRR. All states, I do believe, do offer that. So ask for it if you're facing produce safety rule inspection. If you're in Maryland, you better talk to me. I can help you out. Okay. All right. So you're GAP certified. You want to sell to Whole Foods or Moms or whomever. Okay. There are different GAP programs. I mentioned earlier, Cornell University is going to teach their 3-week online course. It's going to be USDA Basic GAP. You can find out more information on that link. If you're looking to sell to Wegmans or Whole Foods, you may need a higher level of GAP training. That's going to be USDA Harmonized GAP or Harmonized GAP Plus. Now you're looking at allergens, you're looking at biosecurity. It's much more tedious. Trust me, it's much more tedious to do those, but it may be required. Now, I am trained in Harmonized GAP and Harmonized GAP Plus, but there are other third-party audits. So in your location, you may know somebody who has a Primus audit or a Global GAP audit. And generally, Wegmans, Whole Foods, those higher level buyers will accept Primus or Global GAP. And I think there's a couple of other third-party auditors. But the USDA GAP you can always get, and that's going to be good wherever you go. Okay, what about produce safety rule? Okay, so now we're getting into the law as applied to good agricultural practices. So basically, the question is, do you grow and distribute fruits and vegetables that are typically eaten raw? Yes, we do, because we're microgreen growers, okay? Now, notice distribute. So I've got a lot of maybe beginning farmers or medium beginning farmers that end up giving most of their produce to a food bank or a church. You are still distributing, and that value, okay, is included in the amount of produce that you quote unquote sold. Okay, so if you give it away, you have to put a value on it, and that goes towards the, did you sell over $32,416 in produce in 2022? All right, or actually we work on a 3-year rolling average, so the average for 2020 to 2022 is $30,509. Don't forget those cents. All right, this is the government. We love it. Okay, so if you're selling over that amount in produce, now you are falling under the produce safety rule. And in Maryland, MDA does audit or does inspect for produce safety rule. They started with the heavy hitters, those guys that are selling over 600,000, and those people have already been inspected. So now they're going to start working on the middle-sized farms, and that's going to be about the 200,000, maybe on down to the $50,000 a year producers. And now we're talking where you guys live, right? That's where you are. So you may fall under the produce safety rule, okay? However, you can apply for qualified exempt status. Now, you may want to, you may not want to. There are disadvantages and advantages that go beyond what I can talk about here. But the bottom line is you're going to take another training. Sorry. All right. You're going to implement the produce safety rule practices. You're going to get the MDA or FDA inspection. It runs on about a 2 to 3 year cycle. And know that if you go through a good Chewy, and I teach a Chewy GAP training course, you're going to be ready for produce safety rule. Okay, don't forget to request an on-farm readiness review. All right, so let's talk about specific risks to microgreens. Seed contamination. Do you keep records on each lot of seed? Do you know where you bought it? When you bought it? Did it have a lot number? Did you quarantine that seed? Or did you just dump it into the bin with the rest of the broccoli seeds? Think about it. You want to quarantine your seed. What about substrate? Remember the Wegmans salmonella was traced back to contaminated substrate. Who do you buy it from? Do you keep records on each lot? Do you quarantine new incoming substrate? Think about it. Is your storage area clean and tight? Can German cockroaches get in your bins? Indian meal moths. Oh, love to have those. No, you don't. All right. So your storage area needs to be basically tight so that vermin cannot get into it. As a general rule, keep things up off the floor. Just keep them up off the floor. Okay. One tip is allow space between your storage shelves and your racks and the wall so you can get a good clear sight line. It helps you be able to see if you've got critters running behind your shelving units, because from the front they're all full. You can't really see through. Your x-ray vision doesn't work, but from the side you want to monitor that area. Keep your drains clean. Have a cleaning and sanitizing schedule for drains. And this is one place where an SOP would be really, really good. And another thing to think about is, do you have a sanitizing foot mat by the entrances? Okay. Your operation may share a dirty, filthy, stinky loading dock with other operations, with other businesses. That's where the trash bin is that the other people who share your space let their garbage overflow and the rats are. Do you really want your personnel to be tracking that dirty, icky stuff on their feet into your growing area? Maybe not. So think about a sanitizing foot mat. Are you open to the public? Oh, they have grimy shoes too. So think about, you're creating this environment that is going to be very, 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 very clean. And you want to keep it that way. All right. And that leads me to questions.
All right. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
And I will say too, I mean, Carol came through my farm, I think it was last month, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, she taught me a lot, and I'm a clean freak, as she learned when she came through. But I mean, I never thought about sink drains, cleaning those out on a regular basis. I never thought about having some kind of a clean way for feet to come in and things like that. Because we roll racks out the back door and take our trays out, dump them into the trash, and then roll them right back into the farm, and never thought twice about it. So, even the wheels on those, you're bringing in some pretty gross stuff, especially with, wheeling it out towards a dumpster that, restaurants and stuff share that we're next to. So it gets pretty gross out there. So, what I really want to throw out there is, don't be afraid of when this happens. If you have a gap mock audit, having a certified trainer, somebody like Carol in your area coming through, don't be afraid of that. Be open to it, because you're going to learn so much from what they know. And also with the food safety plan, we had both of these things this past year. We had I'm sorry, not the food safety plan, the other one, the food safety,
produce safety rule.
Yeah, produce safety rule. Thank you. We had them come through last year, and we also had Carol come through last year. So it was a great experience in both. When the food safety guys came through, I think it was like June or July, they definitely had some things that they didn't quite understand as far as growing microgreens go. So be aware of that. One of the things they checked off on our form that they were going to submit to the USDA was that we grew sprouts, which we absolutely did not. Yeah. So, I mean, that would have led to all kinds of problems up further in the chain. So, don't be afraid to educate them if you have to. Make sure they fully understand what you're doing. Because you may get somebody like Carol who walks in the door who totally understands everything, but you may get somebody who's brand new or new-ish and doesn't really know what microgreens are. So don't be afraid to kind of push back a little bit and ask questions if you have to. But I mean, I've learned a ton from Carol. We've had many calls on the phone. She's fantastic. I sent her my entire food safety plan. She reviewed all 12 pages of it and, made modifications, and was awesome. So Carol, I literally cannot thank you enough for what you've done, just for not only for us, but for other farms in at least the state of Maryland. It's an awesome thing. And I really encourage everybody heavily to go out and go through this process. Even if you don't plan on getting GAP certified, it's, if you can find the course for free or very cheap in your area, it's worth doing regardless. We did it in 2020. I mean, so it's been 3 years. We're still not officially certified yet. It's just because I have to put some things in place that I'm going to feel good about, before we go down that road. But it's nice to have a resource like Carol that I can reach out to on a regular basis, and she answers me extremely well every time. So find your Carol Allen in your state if you can. She's amazing.
Oh, bless your heart, Andy. Guys, I have to confess, Andy, cover your ears. I really had to work really hard in Andy's operation to find stuff, really. And I'm really lucky because I've had experience with hydroponic growers. We've got some good sized hydroponic growers here in Maryland. aquaponics, I'm going to brag a little bit.
I was going to say, you better.
I just worked with an aquaponics grower, leafy greens and basil, and we got, I think it's the first HGAP plus plan in the country in aquaponics.
Wow.
So yes, and Mike, we need my email out there. So I will try to answer your questions, even if you're out of state. I am totally free because
Great price.
I'm covered by a grant. All right. But you may find that in other states that there are folks that can help you out that will charge you a little bit of money. But unfortunately, I'm supported by MDA or UMDA, but MDA and the feds. So I'm supported all the way down the line. But yeah, I think that before I die, I want every farmer in Maryland, because they're the ones I can reach out and touch the most, to at least take the GAP training, even if you don't go for the certification, the training. Because I can tell you that the foodborne illnesses that occurred in spinach 15 years ago, and the spinach industry has not recovered from that blow. Spinach sales plummeted, and they're still not back to pre-foodborne illness. So you don't want anything damaging your industry, because people are fickle. If they go, oh, don't eat those microgreens, you'll get germs. You don't want that.
I mean, I remember back in the day, Chiquis, it was a Mexican restaurant, big chain, and a green onion took down their whole company. Every operation.
Yep. They were using imported onions, and part of the produce safety rule, which was signed into law in 2011, was really implemented in 2016. It hasn't been that long. Also covers imported produce, and it does impose the same standards on imported produce as are imposed on our local, our United States producers. Yeah. So yes, we had raspberries with, oh my gosh, from Guatemala. What did they have? Salmonella, so yeah, you are a representative of your industry, whether you know it or not.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's probably the most important statement out of everything, is that you are a representative of this industry. And the last thing you want to have is your name on Carol's third or fourth slide there, where it highlights all the microgreen growers that had recalls. So, the goal of this whole thing, and why we brought Carol on here, why we push GAP so often, is to get you guys thinking in that mindset. Because ultimately, all it takes is one mistake, one huge mistake, and this whole entire industry gets shut down almost immediately. And then it's going to take a long time for that to build back up again, because people are already not that familiar with microgreens as it is. They already know what spinach was, and look how much it affected the spinach industry. So it makes it a lot more difficult for something like that to climb back out and get back into the masses. So just do things the right way, and that's the most important thing. But find your local GAP operator and trainer and try and get in touch with them and get trained. It's worth it 100%, especially if you get it for free. You'd be an idiot not to do it.
That's true. I think I just put my email in the chat. So if anybody wants to reach out, I do try to at least get a 24-hour turnaround. But if 47,000, if you email me at once, it'll take me longer. But I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if I can direct you to the person in your region or your state that can help you, I'll do that too. Because we all know each other. We go out for beers and we talk about farmers.
Awesome. That is a great resource, guys. If you want to get a hold of Carol, and she can direct you to the right person or get questions answered from Carol. Even after this, we do appreciate that highly, Carol. And we thank everybody for joining us live. And we want to go ahead and we will see you guys over in the next one. And we'll get into the live Q&A if you're here for live. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. And I want to go ahead, and now that we're getting into the live Q&A, go ahead and highlight our Harvest members. And thank you guys all for being Harvest members, especially Mark, who's been here for 6 months, Thomas, Jennifer, the Microzone, Hoffman's Choice, John. That name is hard on me to say, so thank you, Panos. And that went away too fast for me. And Detroit Mike always is here and doing questions right away and saying hi and everything else. And our newest member, Sundry in Arizona. Thank you guys very much. And now we will get into the live Q&A.
As a side note, Detroit Mike did win the first
Yes.
comment of the day.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
He's
I
back
saw
on
that.
top. All right. Jess, you want to bring up any questions? And if anybody's got any more questions, make sure you get them in the chat. You don't have this opportunity often to get in front of somebody who's got all this GAP certification knowledge. So get your questions in.
All
And
right.
start that timer.
And we're starting the timer. The bell has rung. All right. So I do have a quick question from Jennifer and then a little bit of a lead up on top of that. So she wanted to know, Jennifer Focal said, if I were to rephrase my original, here, we'll go to the original
Yeah, let's go
question.
to the original.
Probably should do that first. Can one get GAP certification if product is grown in one building and packing and tray cleaning is in another building?
Yeah.
The grow room has access to a kitchen for washing hands, no employees. And then to rephrase it, can getting GAP certified be personalized to the business or is it set in stone? Everyone is set up for business a little different.
Okay, Jennifer, can I just take the question?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, Jennifer.
Go ahead.
So I've got some folks who are, they're moving towards retirement age. So they wanted to get their foot in the door, literally growing microgreens in a spare bedroom. Okay, well, that's cool. All right. But that means that they have to do their packing and handling on the kitchen table. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Kitchen table. Ooh. Now, what we can do is we can use time and a clean break to isolate that food contact surface between general use and packing of your microgreens. So yeah, they were GAP certified. And they're knocking them dead in Annapolis. Let me tell you, they're selling to these cushy little boutique food places. They're having a great time. So yes, you can grow in one building. You can grow in one room. You can use your kitchen, but just you're going to use cleaning and sanitizing and taking what's called a clean break in between eating breakfast, clean break, packing sprouts, clean break, eating lunch, ditto. Does that answer your question?
Awesome. That's a really
I think,
great
yeah,
point.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Christina wanted to say that the USDA in her state said that food safety handler's certificate is good enough and liability insurance. She hadn't heard of GAP certification up until now. So
What? Okay, so there's a whole bunch of qualifications on the restaurant side, and that's food safety handlers. You're a grower. That's good agricultural practices. So your USDA person is probably very familiar with restaurants, and there's parallels, okay? So there's a lot of overlap between a food safety handler for a restaurant and a good agricultural practices. But the GAP certification goes on your operation. Okay, so this gets a little mushy. When you go to the course, you, individual, Christina, will get a certificate of training. That does not have anything to do with your operation. You're writing the farm food safety plan, you're implementing the GAP procedures, you're getting that audit. Now your operation is GAP certified. So I really encourage folks to have your employees go through GAP training because that certification goes on their resume, and now they are a much more valuable employee should they want to move from your operation to another. But so the GAP certification is on the operation, the GAP training is on the individual. I think that might clarify it a little bit.
awesome.
Yep.
Jennifer says that answered perfectly. So that's awesome. Good stuff. Thomas, I worry about sanitation so much that it becomes debilitating. I have some OCD tendencies, and if things are not perfect, I struggle making progress. I often worry about the harvesting process,
The dirtiest part.
where some tray may come in contact with sides of the tray which were sanitized when they were planted but have been touched when watering. He also added that he was going to consider implementing gloves when watering as a policy also to kind of help with that cross-contamination issue.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. That's when you write your farm food safety plan, this is where your worker training and your worker standards are things that you impose. It's what you're comfortable with. And wearing gloves, but now make sure that your employees don't put their gloves on and then, play with their hair and, do things to their bodies with the gloves on. That doesn't make it better. So you're going to have some pretty intense training so that your employees understand what the glove is for. Now, gloves do not go over dirty hands. You do that 20-minute happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday with soap, rinse, dry, then glove. So gloves don't cover up dirt. Hands have got to be clean before you put gloves on. But then again, watch and make sure that they're not fiddling with their hair, straightening their clothes, petting the dog, or whatever. All right. So you can contaminate a gloved hand. And it's okay to be OCD about this, really. I am too. And I know some other people who might be. Just not saying. So don't. Mike, how could you say that? Anyway, so you're
Hey,
it's good to be. It's good to be.
About the product touching the sides of the flat where water touched it. Well, now come on. I've already talked about your water is clean. Your distribution system is perfecto. All right. Which means that your water is not carrying contamination when it hits the side of your tray. And if you cleaned the ceiling and there's no cobwebs raining down on your product, please do that. All right. Your circulating fans aren't covered with grime. Carol doesn't go, "Ooh, God, when was the last time you cleaned that?" All right. Then really, you're in good shape. So you can kind of stand down from red alert. Sound like you're doing okay.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right. Mark's here tonight. He said he went through GAP course last year and we became certified last fall. One of our produce distributors required it. Another we tried to get into with required both GAP and HACCP certification. HACCP isn't too bad though.
HACCP is not really bad. And the thing of it is we really are kind of at the mercy of what our buyers want. HACCP is something that if you're processing, this is a certification, and I am HACCP certified, but I'm not so good at it. I don't do it enough to actually teach it. So I would turn someone in Maryland over to people who actually know HACCP inside and outside. I do the GAP part, they do the processing part. So yeah, Mark, I can't give you, I can't give you an argument back. If the buyer requires HACCP certification, I can tell you where you can get it. But yeah, they're calling the shots, and it's because of processing and knowing where your critical controls are.
Yeah, most distributors are going to want to at least GAP, usually GAP Plus, I think, right, Jess?
I think we're looking at harmonized GAP
Harmonized
Plus
GAP,
for the
yeah.
one that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So that will be a little bit more tedious on our end.
It is, having just done it, I think I spent with this one aquaponics grower, I think I have over 20 hours in with him one-on-one, and he probably did twice that again. But we passed every section 100% on the first take. Yes.
Love it.
Because we're both OCD, okay? So you guys who are a little OCD, don't worry about it. It gets you where you need to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. No.
We had another one ask if we can get GAP in the house. So we do have that.
Yep.
John Claus wants to say thank you for all the great info. Same with Isaac, says, wow, that was great. Thank you. Cheryl Dixon's here tonight and says, what is the cost of these certifications? Can small farmers get reimbursed for any certifications?
Well, if you're in Maryland, it's free. I'm sorry. That's a horrible cost. It's free.
Horrible cost.
Totally free. 100%. I'm free. MDA is free. It's all covered by the Specialty Crop Block Grant. Now, if you're growing hemp, it's not covered by the Specialty Crop Block Grant. And I have GAP certified a hemp grower in Maryland because his buyer required it. But if you grow fruits and vegetables, it's totally free in Maryland.
Awesome.
Nice.
So I'm sorry, Cheryl. If you're not in Maryland, I can't help you.
Unfortunately, in Illinois, it is not free.
Yeah. Nothing's free in Illinois.
Nothing's free here.
It's not free to breathe here.
Yes.
I'm actually surprised it's even free in Maryland.
She says, how does insurance come into play? Can certifications lower insurance costs? That might be with your insurance company, but I have never heard of that.
Talk to your insurance company. It depends on what they're insuring. Are they, insuring you against having a foodborne illness outbreak be traced back to your operation? Yeah, I would say that the certification will lower the cost. Let me make myself a note, Cheryl, because the FDA Specialty Crop Block grant, which will help fund GAP certification, is still open so you can apply for it until the end of this month, but I'm going to need to look up that URL and give it to you guys so that you can get it. But that is through FDA, and the Specialty Crop Block grant is open specifically for produce safety.
Awesome.
But it ends the end of this month, so you got until Jan 31.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure we post that and put it throughout the communities that we're in and what we're streaming to, and use it. For sure. All right. Isaac says, I spray my microgreens when they come out of germination with an H2O2 mixture. My questions are, A, is this helpful? And B, would the microgreens benefit from another spray maybe 2 days before harvest?
So this is for these guys to answer on the growing biz. I have grown microgreens. I actually held a capstone class, and we grew microgreens. My capstone class grew microgreens last January. And let me tell you, they really, we ended up the semester by them peddling their microgreens to everybody in the plant sciences building. And the responses were really, really interesting. That was a whole study in itself. Some people went, ew, and some people went, yeah, eat. So it was really interesting thing. But okay, hydrogen peroxide is really not a good fungicide, bactericide. It's really not worth probably you're spending money on. What did you want to do with the H2O2 spray? I mean, what was your effect that you wanted? And then I'm going to turn it over to the growers about spray maybe 2 days before harvest. Would they benefit as a plant? I don't know. You guys would know better than I.
No.
From a food safety standpoint, prevention is going to be a lot better than trying to spray something like a magic cure on it.
I would assume that spray would be for prevention, like if there are ongoing issues and maybe preventing them. But unfortunately, I don't think it would be an effective preventative.
If you have good practices, you don't need it. If you have good soil that doesn't have contamination, you have good seeds not contaminated, trays are clean, they're on top of each other. You have all the good practices, you won't need anything like that. There's no need for it. It's just some people get OCD on, they think they need it because they heard it on the internet from somebody. So not needed if you have all the good practices.
And one of the things that
I agree.
I'm sorry, Andy. One of the other hats that I wear is I am an orchid grower, and I teach people how to grow orchids, and I do a lot of plant pathology on orchid issues, and it all comes down to culture. That's the entire statement on bactericides and fungicides in orchids. It's all culture. Nice. So it's going to work in microgreens too.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you're running into issues where you've got to use H2O2, then you've got other things you have to solve.
Yeah.
Whether it's an airflow thing, whether it's a water thing, whether it's a bad seed, a bad soil batch. I mean, it could be anything. Figure that piece of it out, because the H2O2 is just a Band-Aid on top of a bigger problem.
It's not even a good Band-Aid.
Yeah, it doesn't even probably do much, really.
No.
Another quick question from Thomas. Where do most of the contamination cases occur? I remember she said seed, which makes sense. When it comes to other common instances, we can have some examples of where contamination occurred?
Hands, people, workers, human beings are little contamination machines. And this is why worker training, when we start talking about produce safety rule and GAP on a national basis, and us officials get together over that beer, we're talking about how can we better equip our farmers to be good worker trainers, because that is one of those big ways that contamination gets into your operation. It's people. And then achoo! Oh, so I just wiped my nose with my glove, but I've got a glove on, so it's okay.
Good.
All right. So
you won't believe, working in the restaurant industry, how many people think a glove solves everything. They can do anything they want with gloves on. It is amazing. And these people all go through training, through food safety training in Illinois. You have to do it as a worker in food industry. And they still think that the gloves on, I'm good. I can go anywhere, do anything.
Oh gosh,
I'll never forget. Go ahead.
I've seen that so much. And, just going into, well, you're going to call me a Karen now, because I actually did turn in my local Dunkin' Donuts twice because of their employees literally sneezing into their gloved hands and then making my coffee. And I'm like, no, honey, no.
I'm good. Thank you.
No, I think I changed my mind. Because workers do forget. And I'm going to segue a little bit. So worker training, okay, big stream of cross-contamination, signage. And outside the world of microgreens, we actually work a lot with workers who were not born in the United States. English is a second language to them. And although I've got a lot of training things that are in Spanish and Haitian Creole, and we're working on the language of the Philippines and places like that, pictures, signage, that wash your hands sign, you move it around, you change it so that they don't get, immune to it. But some of your procedures, particularly when it comes to worker training and cross-contamination, signage really, really works. And that morning huddle once a week. Hey, gang, this is what we're going to do for the next week. We're going to be bringing in this crop. We're going to be harvesting that crop. Bring coffee and donuts, and boy, they will be on time to work. And while we're at it, I noticed that we're falling down on our hand washing or whatever, or the cleaning and sanitizing of trays, or whatever little OCD thing that you want to talk about. That morning huddle really, really works. And food and coffee works even better.
Perfect.
And we see it all the time when we train our employees. Is I really drive home the fact that, once you clean your hands and you put those gloves on, you have to be super conscious of what you touch from that point forward. Jennifer, like she just said, cell phones with gloves. I mean, I always would catch an employee. They'll take their glove off, they'll pull their phone out, they'll text somebody back, and they'll put their gloves right back on. I'm like, like, get a new
Which
set.
means that you need, in your farm food safety plan, you need a cell phone policy.
Yep.
And it might be that, your workers get like 4 breaks per day to take 10 minutes to go eat their donut, check their messages, wash hands, come back on.
Yep.
I mean, they're human beings, so you do have to give them some leeway. But the cell phone, you need a policy, and it should not be in the grow room or the harvest room. It's out.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's one of the most conscious things I try and really drive home is just once you got those gloves on, like you said, it's your head, you got to start all over again. Anything. I mean, it's super important, guys. Really, really important. I know it's really anal and very super, super detailed, but it's worth it in the end because like Carol said, I'm going to use this over and over again in every podcast from now on. You are a representative of the microgreen industry, and if you cause the problem and bring the whole industry down, then that's not good. So don't be on their third or fourth slide.
I think half of my life as a restaurant manager was change your gloves.
Yeah.
Change your gloves. Yeah. Every time you see them do something, change your gloves. I think I spend half the time doing that.
Yeah. And then they always get but I just did this. And you're like, no.
You just adjusted your pants, you just, it's something, whatever they did.
Lots of time in the kitchen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gloves are cheap.
Yes.
Recalls are not.
For sure. Mark did say that I did take the HACCP course, but the certification is expensive. Does that grant also cover HACCP certification? Ooh.
I'm not sure. I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I think it is aimed at growers of fruits and vegetables, which means it may not cover processors. And HACCP is a processing certification. And it did set me back a few $100s for the HACCP course, but I figured I really need it so that I can serve you guys a little bit better to have an understanding of HACCP. But I'm not so good that I can teach it.
Gotcha. Carol, where are you located? John wants to know.
I'm in Maryland.
So John is actually in Maryland. He's in Finksburg, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why he's asking.
So John, right now, as of this moment, I am the only authorized GAP trainer in the state.
Wow.
So that's why I love, hey, if you can get 5 or 6 people in your area up there, I will be there with bells on. I'll even sometimes bring the coffee and donuts. But you have the space, you get me the people, you got a GAP training course. Ba-doom, ba-doom. Right now, I'm a member of the Plant Science Food Safety Group out of the University of Maryland College Park. And we are the only people who have an MOU with MDA, Maryland Department of Agriculture, to do GAP training. Nobody else does. So yeah. And then virtual, I'm sorry, I use Zoom after this classy thing here today. Man, I'm like, whoa, I'm so impressed. We use cruddy old Zoom, but yeah, I can do one-on-one if you're in a really tight place. I like the interplay if I've got more than one person, because you all learn from each other. It's really cool. And in person is great now that we don't have to worry quite so much about COVID. I go any place.
Awesome.
And I'm free.
Free. Best price you can get, John. So
yeah,
use that resource. Sure.
For sure. And I just reposted your email for John, so that if he wants to reach out, definitely do that. Let's see. Jennifer,
yeah, John, obviously you and I are in contact all the time. So if you have any questions, let me know, man.
Perfect. If growing flowers, when would you have to become a nursery? Ooh, edible flowers?
Well, okay. So if you are, now you're getting into value added, and believe it or not, that is actually a separate thing. If you're growing flowers that will be made into teas or infusions or baked in cookies, although that is a kill step, you're going to be working more with your local health department. I'm sorry, because from county to county, they vary greatly. So unless you're selling these without adequate processing, it may behoove you to be GAP certified. If you're not using them, if you're not growing them to be eaten, you can call yourself a nursery. Now you're looking at, I don't even know who in the state of Maryland, and that's my state, that you can just call yourself a nursery. Hi, I'm a nursery. Be GAP certified if you're going to sell them at a farm market to be eaten without a kill step. And a tea is real borderline on kill step. So now you're going to talk to your local health department too.
Now, just doing flowers as edible flowers that you're doing for restaurants to make their stuff pretty, does that fall underneath GAP?
Yeah, you could, because look at that cross-contamination possibility, because you may not manure your microgreen trays, but you might use manure or not finished compost, inadequately finished compost, to fertilize your flower fields. So there's a really good contamination stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about growing them indoors in most cases. For microgreen growers, the next phase often is to grow edible flowers.
Indoor edible flowers
as well.
Yes.
Yep.
And we always encourage people to use products such as AgroThrive, which are a finished product that's organic certified. Whether or not you want to be organic certified doesn't matter. But using a high quality fertilizer that is not compost and does not have pathogen risks.
So I do have to say one little thing here. Organic certification has absolutely nothing to do with food safety. And a lot of organic practices are in opposition to food safety. So yes, I'll be honest, most of my serious growers, even small, medium farmers, conventional farmers, do not use compost or manures because they don't want to put up with the hassle, the record keeping, and the potential contamination. And I know, sustainability wise, we'd love to use those products, but when it comes to food safety, it becomes a real headache.
For sure. And especially on indoor growing.
Yep.
Indoor, outdoor doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I do a lot of controlled environment, and it doesn't matter. Contamination is contamination.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you guys download the mock GAP audit form that was posted in the chat, there's a lot of stuff on manure. So now you won't have to worry about.
Yes.
You skip over very large sections of that whole entire audit process.
Good stuff. Another question. If a grower wants to use spring water from a spring, how often must it be tested a year? Is that 4 times a year for that one?
You can't use it on microgreens.
Mm.
It's surface water, people.
Yeah.
It means
Yep.
it's open to the environment. And this is something that in conventional farming, we will test it 4 times a year. Actually, it's 3 times a year, but it depends on if your produce safety rule, it might be 5 times a year, it might be 20 times a year. It depends on produce safety rule, and water gets really weird. But if you've got a spring, that's considered surface water. And really, if you're going to grow microgreens, you want potable water.
Perfect.
And that's not potable water. Now, right now, the feds are working with some standards on adding sanitizers to surface water, such as like your spring water, but now you're adding sanitizers to it. And the reason if you're using spring water is because you want that purity. All right. Now, in order to use it on sprouts or microgreens, now your best bet is you're going to need to sanitize it. And the feds still haven't figured out what their standards are. So I'm like, I don't think you want to go there.
Just don't go there.
Yeah.
Now
You don't have to. Don't go there.
you could boil it.
Yeah.
And and that you could probably, if I was your advisor, you could probably sweet talk me into allowing that. If I saw that your procedures were documented, oh my gosh, records, come on, you'd have to make records like out the yin yang. So at that point, I don't think you want to use spring water. It's going to be too much work.
Too much work take you away from selling and getting the business going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Use easy stuff. Do easy stuff, not hard
Yeah.
stuff.
Keep it simple, guys.
Yeah, there you go.
And real quick on that too, one other thing I want to throw out there that I learned from Carol also is that correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, but the type of hose you use is actually important as well. I mean, it's not just, you can't just go buy any other hose. You want to actually get a food grade or food. I don't know what the correct term is. Correct me, please.
No, food grade.
You know what
Food
I'm
grade.
talking about.
Mike, if you've been in the restaurant industry, you probably know this. You have to have food grade quality hoses.
Yeah.
So, but there was a question before Jennifer's comment of interesting, and I didn't get a chance to read it.
I'll go right back to it. I just wanted to make sure I put her comment on that. Thomas says, thank you so much, all of you. I think I know the answer to this, but it would be very convenient if I could use an alcohol hand sanitizer on gloves to avoid using 20 pairs each time I enter the grow. No.
Yes, that's
They
gonna
are
be a big no.
disposable gloves. Disposable.
Okay, so let me get down into the nitty gritty. So it's cleaning and sanitizing. Sanitizing cannot stand by itself. And the reason being is that even on those gloves, now that you've fiddled with your hair, adjusted your pants, cleaned your ear, whatever, you have particulate matter. You've got soil on those gloves. So you need a detergent, abrasion, and water to move the soil because the soil harbors those microbes. Your sanitizer doesn't have the muscle to be able to get into that particulate matter where the microbes are hanging out and call those sanitized. So that's why, post-COVID, everybody's got their hand sanitizer on every corner. Guys, just go wash your hands. If you really want to use a hand sanitizer, use it after. But a hand sanitizer does not clean and sanitize anything, and gloves in particular. And if your employees are using 20 pair a day, I think you need to do some training there. Don't scratch your head with your gloves on. I know it is tough. You do have to integrate, particularly in a small operation where you are just a one-man band. I do feel your pain.
Yeah, when you're one person and you're going to go back and forth between tasks and stuff, it could probably get up there, but really they're pretty cheap in reality. It shouldn't affect your business revenue at all using gloves.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
As long as you're not buying like super expensive, cut-proof rubber gloves or something, just get the cheapest ones you can find. That's all you need, just disposable gloves. They work great.
Hey, there's Josh.
There's Josh. Crazy part, there's a food safe Clorox out there too.
Oh, geez.
Okay, and actually growing microgreens, this is a really, really important point. When you choose your detergents and your sanitizers, they must on the label be safe for food use. Mm-hmm. So that means you can't go to Safeway and pick up the cheapo house brand Clorox first of all, read the label, because you're going to see that concentrations vary from little nuance. Well, this is a disinfectant Clorox, and this is a blah, blah, blah Clorox. And read that concentration level. And then read the label, because the label is the law, and that's not just in Maryland, that's in all of the United States. The label is the law. So if you're going to use Clorox as your sanitizer, make your dilutions according to the label, and make sure that it's food safe, and make sure that your detergents are food safe. And the really cool thing of it is, it's the same thing that you use for dishes.
Yep.
You can use Dawn, you can use Palmolive. Any one of those are food safe. Go for it. Sanitizer, make sure it says it's food safe.
Yes.
Yes. Just remember, we are growing food. This is food. So just think food safety when you're doing this stuff.
She says, Jennifer says, so public chlorinated and fluoride is okay. I mean,
I know.
it is potable water. If you are worried about chlorinated and fluoride, definitely look into doing a filtration system if that's something concerning.
Now,
That's
I'm
what we
going to
have
throw
here.
one thing in there. I worked with one of my growers. He's a good grower too. Oh my gosh, he's really, really anal. I love him. And we kept on. So we water tested on the intake, and he was pulling from wells. The wells were clean. But when he tested on his hose, we were getting E. coli. Now, E. coli is used as an indicator organism that we got poop here, guys. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We kept on getting these constant low-level E. coli readings, and we were going absolutely bananas trying to find out where the contamination was. It was his filtration system.
Wow.
So if you're going to use a filtration system, that means that you have to clean and sanitize that thing on a regular basis, because you can get particulate matter with E. coli or our friend Salmonella in there, and then you're spewing it out your hose, and you don't want that.
Definitely. And Detroit Mike just wanted to say, great show as always. I've learned a lot. Thank you, Carol. All right. We have run out of time on the Q&A timer.
We did have a poll up too. So what was the results of the poll?
That's a great question, because I haven't looked at the poll.
I think I got it here. So on the poll, if you looked like getting GAP certification or food safety training before, 74% no. So we got some work to do, guys. Get out there and get the certifications done. So
perfect.
You now know. You know that you need it.
And it's not as scary as you think.
No, it's not scary at all. And if you get to have me as a trainer, just think how much fun we'll have.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. John's going to be very lucky.
Yes.
All the rest of you guys are going to have to find somebody else.
We will not be as lucky, I'm sure.
No, we don't have a Carol.
We don't have a Carol around. All right. If you haven't yet, make sure you get in #Thumbcast. We'll be doing a giveaway here in a few seconds. So make sure you get that in.
Yes.
Jess, we got anything else?
I don't have any other questions from anybody. Anybody have any last second questions?
Doesn't look like it. So going to pull up the giveaway. We have 21 likes, it looks like. So thank you guys for liking this video. 30 people, 31 watching right now. So
and only 15 entries, guys.
15 entries into
15
this.
entries.
Oh, wow. Yeah, come on. #Thumbcast.
Let's get
free
it.
stuff, literally.
Literally,
Literally
stuff.
free.
All right, so let me share
There we
that
go.
screen for the giveaway tool. 16 entries. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Nice.
There we come. There we go.
There's everybody.
All right. Carol, we really do appreciate you being on here and taking your time spending with us and going over this. I've learned a lot through this talk from you. So some things that we got to do as well as getting ready for this GAP stuff and everything else we're doing. So highly appreciate it that you came on here and did this training for everybody.
I totally agree. I'm very lucky to have Carol here in the state with me. Very, very lucky. She's super sweet, incredibly knowledgeable. It's been an absolute godsend towards our journey. I mean, I took the class 3 years ago. She was one of the instructors, and I've been in touch ever since then. So it took me 3 years to finally get to the point where I'm like, all right, maybe I should do this now.
John, don't be excited. Don't be terrified. It's okay. It's really, really easy. Honest. It's easy.
It's really not that bad. I mean, honestly, you'll get a lot out of the training, but you'll get so much more out of actually looking through the audit form, because that's where you really see the details that they're looking for. As far as your SOPs go, all the major things that they're going to see, the minor things that they're going to see, it's really important just to go through that. There's a lot of things that, even like cleaning your ceiling or making sure that your your lights are covered, so if they break, they're not going to fall into your plants, things like that. Little things you'd never even think of. So, don't be afraid of it. Take it as a learning experience. That's really what it boils down to. But if it puts good agricultural practices in place in your farm, even if you choose not to get certified, it's worth it alone. Because then at least you're covered. You're doing things the right way as best you can.
Yep.
And protect the industry.
Yes.
Please.
One more quick question Josh asks. How fast should the GAP process take?
Well, if you can get a hold of me, all right. And actually, I am pretty available. I really am. I'm very available because unlike your local extension agent, I don't have to deal with 4-H. I don't have to deal with agronomy. All I do is food safety. I'm 100% food safety. I am the food safety person for the state. So I'm very available. Then it's going to depend on how fast you can implement some of the things that we're going to learn about and how fast you can write the farm food safety plan. And then it depends on, in Maryland, the availability of the MDA, food quality assurance folks, and when they can get out to your farm. So I would say 6 months, reasonable.
Reasonable.
You can do it faster.
Yep.
But 6 months.
A lot of it's just writing, putting together your procedures, putting together your food safety plan. There's a lot of thought that has to go into that stuff, and it's got to be right. And you've got to make sure you're actually doing it. You got to make sure you're documenting it, which is why it seems like a crazy thing. But in FarmFlow, I've got all those features in there on purpose for this reason. So when you get to that point where you're ready to do GAP, you have all your records built right in there. When you export reports out of FarmFlow, it has your company's name and the address information and everything already in there. So you just export those reports, send them off to the auditor, and it's a easy peasy, lemon squeezy. That's the whole point why we did that. It seems kind of weird to have those extra options, but that's why they're in there, so you guys can take this all the way to an HGAP Plus and still have all the features you need. That's the idea.
Yes. Thomas says, great show. Learned a bunch. Listening again at work in the morning. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, we appreciate all the good questions too, Thomas.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And everybody else as well. Thank you for that. And thank you for doing this again, Carol. So want to go ahead and spin? Just
giving away today.
Well, we don't know yet. We got to spin the wheel, right?
Everybody got the hashtag Thumbcast in?
Remember, guys, if you do win, your name does come up. Go ahead and be ready to put in how many spins you want that wheel to be. The wheel of giveaways, anywhere from 1 to 30. Jess appreciates smaller numbers. But you go all the way to 1 to 30. And that's how many times she'll click the mouse and that wheel will spin. And we are on our way.
I definitely just clicked anyway.
Alyssa Beckler, that's my guess this week.
Okay, I was going to say, you got to get a
little
little.
Mario.
Hey, Mario. All right.
I think this is the second time Mario's won something.
Probably.
So congratulations, Mario. This is because he's here all the time.
Yeah.
And interacting. And
Yeah,
Mario's being nice, too. He only
I
wants
love
2
it.
spins.
Wheel
So she
up
is getting the
names.
wheel up now. With all the stuff we had in the back with Carol and doing stuff, it's she didn't have the wheel ready to go, but definitely was more important to have Carol's presentation up. So here we go. Congratulations, Mario, and good luck.
What was my number?
2.
2?
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quick spin.
Mario, you had left before we were wishing you Happy New Year last year, and 6 o'clock rolled around. You had jumped off by then.
Yes. Yes, we were. Oh. What is that on?
Okay.
Hey.
Farmflow for 3 months.
Nice. He can definitely use that because he's already in there.
Congratulations, Mario. That's a good win there.
Nice.
FarmFlow for 3 months for free. So definitely get a hold of Andy. I know you know how to get a hold of Andy, so I will give out the information. So you guys have been in contact, so congratulations on that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah,
And
he can definitely use that because
Joyce
he's already in there.
Quick message for me. Can you shoot me an email and I will get you an updated for that Discord for your perks. Just shoot an email over to Mike at Microgreens Business Coaching, and I'll get an updated link for you.
Yeah. Don't know why that's on there.
I'm not sure why that's not going through. So we'll fix that for you, though, bud.
All right.
All right. Anything else for you guys tonight?
I think we're good. We appreciate everybody showing up and having the great questions and taking the time to listen. And Carol, thank you again for being here. We highly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and don't hesitate to reach out to Carol. She's amazing. I mean, obviously, if she gets super overwhelmed, then it may take a day or two, but she's always really good about getting back to everybody, especially for me. I mean, I've had no issues at all. So don't hesitate to use her as a resource. She can at least hopefully point you in the direction in your state as to who you can talk to and go from there. So, and Carol, I have one question actually. If they were to take the University of Maryland training course, does that carry nationally, or is that only Maryland?
Yes.
It does carry nationally?
It's gonna
Okay,
carry
I thought it
nationally.
did.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now,
Okay.
so what the procedure is that when you complete the course, and you have to stick through that whole 8 hours of me. All right. I send your name and address in to MDA, Food Quality Assurance folks, and they will issue a certificate. And that certificate of training is good any place.
Awesome. So John, who's trying to get his GAP certified training, obviously, if there's anybody else in the chat that also wants to get that up and running, like Carol said earlier, she does it per request. So if John can get 6, 7, 12, 15, 20 people, that are in this right now, that are in the United States that want to be part of that, let's try and get that moving in the chat. And then that way you guys can organize an actual event, and then Carol can do it for you guys. Because she's a great teacher and you'll learn a ton. So don't worry about that part of it.
I will put a community post up in the YouTube area, and if anybody wants, they can go comment there, and then we'll get everybody connected, and maybe we can get something together with all of you. So check that out. That'll be coming up a day or two here.
Yeah. Yep. Andy, Mike, I'm going to get you that URL on that specialty crop block grant.
Yes.
That expires January of 31 of this year for assistance in food safety training and implementation.
Yep.
So I'll get you that
awesome.
URL.
Yep. Yeah. We'll make sure we put that in here too.
All right. Awesome. And just remember, guys, if you're not a member, you got about 24 hours to be able to watch this Q&A part. This Q&A part will be falling off and it'll go to members only. So if you need to, while you watch this, make sure you become a member of the channel so you can do that. Other than that, again, thank you all. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Andy. And we'll see you guys next time.
Awesome.